2 years ago, I installed raised beds from 4 different companies so I could compare them side by side year over year for you guys. Unboxing and initial reviews definitely have their place, but if you're buying something that's supposed to last for 20 plus years, then you really need these long-term reviews. These raised beds have been through a lot. They've been through rain, they've now been through ice and a hurricane. And so today I'm going to talk about all the ways in which they are holding up and all the ways that they are starting to fail. And if you're looking to get into the nitty-gritty details of how all these different companies are very similar and also different in some ways, then you're gonna have to go back and watch my original review where I extensively get into all of the details of how all of these different companies compare to each other. But today, all we are doing is checking in on them and seeing how they've held up over time. For each of these companies, I'm going to be looking at 3 major categories. I'm going to be looking at bowing, which I would consider to be the most extreme kind of wear. We're going to be looking for cosmetic wear, and then we're going to be looking for rust wherever it may show up. All right, so starting off with bowing, we are going to be looking at the Vego raised bed. And this one is actually older than the other ones in my yard. It is coming into its 5th year. And so we will be using it as the oldest raised bed of the Vegos as the standard to which we are comparing stuff, because I want you guys to have as much information as possible. So far, this raised bed has not shown any signs of bowing whatsoever. Next, we are looking at Vegega. And because of the way that I've set this raised bed up in a square, it is the most likely to bow, I think, out of any of my other raised beds because it does not have any of the internal supports going across it that all the other raised beds do. It was too wide for the supports that were provided. So this is fully without any supports, and you can see the sides still look straight as a board. Next, we're going to look at the Anleolife bed. And this one, I think, also is holding up really well. I do not see signs of bowing in this one. Next, we're going to look at the Kesfitt raised bed. Remember, this was our budget option. And I was thinking this one might bow out because it does not have any internal supports. It is a little bit shorter than all the other ones. But to my surprise, it is actually staying pretty straight. All right, now we're going to check out the cosmetic wear and tear starting back here at the Vego. You can see this corner gets a lot of wear from me. I've dented it from running the lawnmower right in between here. And this area is also pretty scratched up. But one of the things that I am really surprised by is even though these scratches have been here for a while, they have never ever rusted, even though the paint was scraped away. Something else I'm pretty surprised by is just how much this has not faded over time. You can see this part that's been covered. You can't even really barely tell that it's been covered this whole time. This dark green color is really good about not fading in the sun. The same cannot be said for this terracotta one right here. So this terracotta one right here is also Vego. And if you look at it from the top, you can kind of see how the upper sides of these bumps are faded as opposed to the lower sides. It's really, really subtle. And if you weren't looking for it, I don't think you would really notice it. But this one also is the only one I had that came with a brown little rubber topper. And the brown color has also faded pretty bad. The black ones I found tend to stay their color, but this brown one just continues to fade. Now for Veggega, I have this one green one, which is slightly older than the blue one we were looking at. This one is pretty fade resistant, and like I was saying, it's got this black banding here on the top that has not faded in color at all. And the blue of this Veggega is just as vibrant as the day I got it. It also has the black band here at the top. And if I can get that off, you can see no fading there, no fading on the band. You can see this fix here from last year. I had this band, it was a little short because it had shrunk up a little bit. I filled in the gap and it has shrunk again. So All I can say is when you're installing this, make sure that you're compressing it instead of stretching it along as you are pressing it on. I think that will help a little bit. Now, in contrast, this Kesfitt, I think, has faded quite a bit. It was a lot darker when I got it, and you can kind of see it under there. And also up in here, you can see a lot of that fading. The rubber at the top is still in pretty good condition. It's a little more faded than the others, but honestly, it still feels like it's in good condition. And that is the more important thing, is whether or not it's getting old and cracking. This one has also been quite scratched up from my mower, and surprisingly has not rusted in any of those spots. Because I do hit this corner with my mower a lot though, I did damage the rubber right here. You can see it's in pretty rough shape. And I think that this kind of damage, like you can see the metal that is inside of this rubber. So it's rubber and metal. And these bands of metal have started rusting. And this is almost definitely where it's going to start failing first. And while the rubber around the top is kind of nice, I don't think that it is very necessary, because the tops of all of these are really quite rounded to begin with. All right, and if we take a look at the Anleolife, you can see, I mean, it's white, so I would never be able to tell if it faded, but it still looks nice and shiny. And there is no rubber gasket on the top of this one, but everything looks pretty much the way I remember it from the day I put it in. And before we get into who's rusting and who's not, I do just want to say I have discount codes for you. You can find them in the description below. Okay, now let's talk rust. And one of the things I didn't do last year that I really should have done for you guys is actually dug down and looked at how the supports were doing under the soil. And I'm sorry I didn't do that last year, but I am here to do it for you now. So here on my Vego, we are going to go down and look at the support that is right here that I have uncovered for us. This looks pretty good. You can see that there's some scratches and such on the metal, but I don't see anything that looks like rust on this support. And if we dig down and look at some of these bolts that are below the surface level, again, we're not seeing any rust, and these ones that are above the soil actually look like just brand spanking new. Now, if we look at the Vegega, so I have this Vegega and I have the tiered one, right? Neither one of those has supports in it, so I can't show you supports on the Vegega, but we can look at the bolts. And so these ones above are looking pretty shiny. And then down here below the soil surface is also looking pretty shiny, to be honest. As far as I can tell, there's no rust on any of the Vego or the Vegega beds. However, if you watched the 1-year update, you will remember that we did find rust on the Anleolife. And that is right here on the supports going through the middle. And what's really interesting is that the support is a little bit rusted, but the bolts and nuts are not rusted at all. The only rust on the whole thing is just along the top of this support. And I actually dug down to look at the lower support, because this one has two right on top of each other. And the lower support actually did not have signs of rust on it. So last year when I was seeing this, I was getting pretty concerned, but given that it seems to have barely gotten worse, and also the one under the soil doesn't seem to be rusting, I think it's a little bit less of a concern than I originally thought. You can also just pick a bolt basically anywhere on this and see that it's not rusting. And then when it comes to the Kesfitt, remember, no supports inside it to check. And we already talked about the rusting on the rim. But if we look at the bolts, you can see that we've got shiny, and then these ones down here are getting kind of dull. They're definitely showing wear, but they are not rusting. So here at the end of year 2, who am I still recommending? I would say I'm still with Vego and Vegega right there at the top. I think you can't go wrong picking either one of those. And Anleolife, again, they are still doing pretty good. It is the most rusty out of any of them, but the rest of it is in such good condition that if you really want the size advantage of going with that brand, then I really, at this point, still think it's a solid decision. And then, of course, when it comes to a budget decision, Kesfitt is still holding up surprisingly well. And when we're talking about rust, I do just want to quickly contrast this for you guys with this video that I took of my best friend's just plain old galvanized steel raised bed that she bought just last year. You can see how quickly it's already starting to rust, and I think it's pretty easy to see the difference and see that hers is not going to last nearly as long as any one of the brands that we're talking about here today. All right, and as a reminder, if you are going to be buying any of these this season, make sure to check the description below for your discount code. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, happy gardening.